Redevelopment Authority meeting for Tuesday, February 6, 2008 at 5 o'clock. First is on the agenda, update Route 44 Development Urban Renewal Plan. And sub would be eminent domain, discussion and possible vote. They're supposed to be here. I know they're upstairs, so I'd take a motion to table till they get here.
Make the motion to table it until they get here.
I'll second that.
Motion made and second. Do I have any other discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Next on the agenda is, no for Bob. Next on the agenda, Code of Conduct and Social Media Code of Conduct. Discussion and vote on members' Code of Conduct that will require all members to comply as approved by the Redevelopment Authority as a board member. This has been on our agenda for a couple meetings. We were waiting for to get clarification on a couple items from Mike Milanowski. That was one of the reasons why we had it on again today. But when he's here, he can answer that. Oh, he is here.
Mr. Chairman, I read through them again and I had a few changes, and obviously maybe the questions would will be answered. I don't know if Mike,
Ask away.
as he speaks.
Welcome, Mike. We're working on the Code of Conduct and social media. We tabled the first item until everybody got here.
Okay.
So Joanna had a couple of questions on clarification on the Code of Conduct or the other one. So Joanna.
Code of conduct I thought was okay. I didn't have any questions on that, but on the code of conduct, excuse me, the blogger one I didn't have any questions on, but on the code of conduct for the redevelopment, I think the other one was social media, or is that?
Yeah.
Okay. The first one, it says 1. Under A, realize that his or her basic function is to make policy. I just said period. It says delegate to the I crossed all that out. Under B, I said, it says realize that he or she is one of a team and should abide by and carry out all of board decisions once they are made, even if he or she cast a minority vote. I think that came from you. Down to skipping over C, D, E, and I'm looking at F. Abide by the ethics guidelines established by the state and not use the position of the board to obtain inside information on matters that may benefit someone personally. And then on 2, it says a member of the Carver Redevelopment Authority in his or her relationships, I'm saying with the executive director / chairman, should, and I skipped over A, B, C. I'm saying give the executive director / chairman the responsibility for discharging his or her disposition and solution. And a D, I'm saying not give instructions to or request assistance from the town department heads, but rather channel all such activities through the full board and or the executive director and or the chairman. Going along on 3, the top part of it says a member of the Carver Redevelopment Authority is in his or her relations with fellow board members should, and I had no problems with A, B, C, D, but E, I'm saying refrain from communicating the position of the Carver Redevelopment Authority to such entities as reporters, state officials, or the general public unless that position is already public record, crossed out part of, and the full board has previously agreed on both the position and the language of the communication, period. F and G, I didn't have a problem. I went down to 4. And it says a member of the Carver Redevelopment Authority in his or her relationships with town staff should. I didn't have a problem with A, but when I got to B, I had a problem. It said limit contact to specific town staff and/or requests for additional background information, period. I crossed everything else out under that B. C, never publicly criticize an individual employee. Concerns about staff performance should only be made to the executive director/chairman through private conversation. D, didn't like it, crossed that one out. E, I had no problem with that. And 5, we had added that, and I have no problem with that. Those are my comments on the changes that I would like the board to,
Okay.
through the secretary, I guess, make, and then have them come back again, unless we have objections now, I don't know.
So discussion on some of the items that Joanna had brought up. Mr. Savory, do you have any?
The only, and I agree with everything that Joanna said, except a number 4D, which states limit requests for staff support and ensure that all requests go through the town administrator's
Wait,
office.
excuse me, one second.
4D.
4.
D, the one you crossed
The one,
out.
the one I crossed out, okay.
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
It's not crossed out on mine yet. My question is, and this is probably to you, what is the purpose of that being in there for the Board of Selectmen? Because that's where this was taken from. Is that just for time management of town employees, or?
Sure, so from the Board of Selectmen's standpoint, is the Board of Selectmen is in charge of policy. And then they then direct the town administrator to implement that policy that's there. It was designed for a time management standpoint so that you don't have any individual members of the Board of Selectmen going to a particular department head and trying to direct them what to do or to do X type of work, because it's my job to make sure that the town runs efficiently and effectively, so that, you know, there are processes and priorities that are done from a comprehensive standpoint, and this was to eliminate that from occurring. So as it relates to the redevelopment authority, is you really don't have any staff for staff support, with the exception of the executive director. That's the only thing you have. So to some extent, I think Joanna taking this out is probably not a problem.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
all right, that was my question from before on this. Everything else that Joanna said, I agree with,
Okay, thank you.
so I'm good with taking that out.
Any other items that you,
Not on this one.
Mr. Boyd?
I just, like I said, anything that infringes the rights of being able to speak out, all right, under the First Amendment, all right, has to be upheld. When you turn around and try to silence somebody or a group of people, I think is wrong. And whether you're an elected member here or you're a general public. So I think that's what some of this does, is it limits the ability to the public to know what's going on, that couldn't need to know what's going on. It also says in there that you can't talk to the media, and it says you can't talk to government officials, and I think the state whistleblower law, that would violate that. So, I mean, like I said, I disagree with those portions of it, so.
Okay. Mike?
I just have to categorically disagree with Mr. Feldman that that's not the intent of here. The intent here is to have an orderly function government run that provides full transparency. Nothing in this document prohibits transparency. Nothing in this document prohibits the public's right to know. As a matter of fact, it enhances it. He clearly has his opinion, but that opinion is not shared by the Board of Selectmen or, you know, the rest of the town government, to my knowledge.
Through you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Even on this agenda, it says that will require all members to comply as above by the Redevelopment Authority as a member of the board. Comply means you have to follow it. And like I said, I categorically deny I will ever follow it. So, I mean, my only question now to the board is, what punishment would there be for me to violate it? Or any other member?
Mr. Chairman, if I could, the
Go
board
ahead.
functions as a democratic body. and it goes by the will of the majority. And if the majority votes to move forward on selling a piece of property, say a 4-to-1 vote, or 3-to-2 vote, the board, as a governmental body, has made that decision to do that. And therefore, that action must go forward. The minority voters on that have to abide by the rule of the majority. So I'm not sure where Mr. Bellman's going on this, but at the end of the day, it's the majority rules and the majority moves forward with projects. That's the democratic way.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, okay.
I understand that, okay, but when you have a policy like this that turns around and
Like what?
says,
Can you be specific?
the policy that's gonna be, that we're voting on right now, that I feel that interferes with my rights or any other right of the members to speak out the way they wanna speak out. I'm not saying anything about following what the board does. The board votes in favor of it, fine, go right ahead. I may not agree and I may not follow through with what's going on. All right, so I mean, I may not help out in that project, and that's my right. I was elected here for a reason, okay, and the bottom line is, if I don't like it, then I don't like it. Same with anyone else here. If you don't like something that's being done, then you shouldn't be forced into doing something you don't want to do. And that's where I'm at.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes.
I had some additions, the 1B, it says realize that he or she is, it's almost replicating what Mike said, but realize that he or she is one of a team and should abide by and carry out all board decisions once they are made, even if he or she cast a minority vote. And the very last thing that we added, number 5, says, if there's a Carver Redevelopment Authority issue, it should be brought to the chairman before it goes anywhere else. Do you have a problem with that?
Yeah, because I think the chairman turnaround may not be impartial.
But these are your words.
Like I
It
said,
came from you, and
it
I
did,
copied
it
it
did,
down.
but
And
even
even at
still-
the selectmen's meeting, you even put that forth to them as well, to try to rectify some of these things that have happened
But
between
something's
Bob
happened
Belvin
in
and the
between,
town.
in between that right now, so.
Well, Bob, you were elected to this committee, but if we elect this code of conduct and there's 4 of us or whatever, and that's the majority, and we elect it, I don't know if there's any consequences, Mr. Chairman, but I wouldn't like it if you voted on it or didn't, or accepted, but please, this is the board, you're part of it. Don't go babbling to everybody that you didn't like it or you liked it. I mean, take it up with the chairman, take it up with the executive director.
So,
Get it resolved. Please.
If I could, Mr. Chairman, I mean, that discussion would be properly recorded in the minutes, and people would have understood where you voted. But I think going back to the code of conduct, and is that the last thing that this board or any governmental body needs is a saboteur or somebody who's trying to undermine the will of the board. And if the will of the board is to go in a certain direction, then that is the governmental process that was chosen. And I know, Bob, you're saying you don't like this, but you're talking in generalities. And if there's some specific language that you can point out to, which I haven't heard you point out to, that you find is offensive, then let's talk about that. But to date, it's just a general statement.
When we had this first discussion, I did have specific instances for it. And the bottom line here is now it's up for the board to decide and the board to vote on it, so.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
yes, sir.
I just want to also repeat here what we put in here under 3E. So what I believe you're talking about, that you said that you're not allowed to talk to reporters. It says here, refrain from communicating to entities such as reporters, state officials, or the general public, unless the position is already part of the public record or the full board has previously agreed. So it's not putting a muzzle on you, it's just making sure that we're all aware, the whole group is aware that this is now public, in the public domain, and is free for conversation to the public throughout whatever means you feel is necessary. That's my feeling, and that's why we changed that wording from the original.
Brian, you got anything?
Well, my feelings are that this document, really, if Bob's saying what he's saying, if I understand what Bob's saying to be true, that he's just not going to follow it at all, I think we've wasted enough time on this, and if we keep going any further to change things and edit things based upon the belief that this document is a muzzle for any one of us, we're wasting our time. And then the document's not worth the paper that it's written on. The Board of Selectmen follow it, and I don't think that the Board of Selectmen have violated this document in any way, shape, or form. And I don't think that any of us are gonna do that. So I think we need to just get down to business, vote on the document, and move on. And, when the time comes, if Bob wants to, or Mr. Belvin wants to, carry on the way he wants to carry on, let him. And, then deal with it step by step, rather than get stuck in the weeds like we are right now.
Okay.
That's
So-
all I have to say.
Thanks, Brian. My only 2 cents on this whole thing is that, Bob, you've done, in your previous time here and on this one, you always put the effort forward to do your homework, have all the information available, and speak your mind in an open public session. I don't see where this is gonna handcuff you in any ways, or any other board member. I don't have a problem with the changes that you've brought. I don't have any changes that Savory's brought. I think it gives us good structure and guidance for whether it's this board or any other board members coming on board, because this changes every year. So, that's my 2 cents worth. So, that being said, if anybody doesn't have anything else to say, I'd entertain a motion to approve or not. So what's the
I
pleasure?
forgot to add one thing with the changes. I want to make sure that every year, this comes at the annual, or the what do you call that? New.
Yeah, you update it annually, yeah.
Well, when we come together, organization, that's what I was looking for.
So the Board of Selectmen, when they have their organizational
Yeah.
meeting in May,
Right.
is they revote the policies every year, and they
Right.
relook at them every year,
Right.
because it's a dynamic
Yeah,
process.
exactly.
You need to relook at it.
Absolutely, and I wanted to add that into the motion, Mr. Chairman.
Did you make a motion?
I didn't, go ahead.
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion that we vote in the code of conduct as edited by Ms. Layton, add her comments, and move forward.
I will second that.
Motion made and second. Any other discussion? Mr. Bob, you got anything else?
And that it gets
Savory.
reintroduced on the organization.
Okay,
Every
and then
year.
it gets annually
Reviewed
reintroduced
and
and reviewed.
revoted.
And revoted. Anything else?
No,
Annually. Okay.
Joanna, do you have anything else you want to put?
no,
Brian?
I'm all set.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye?
aye.
All opposed?
No.
Thank you. That was the social media part, or was that the code of conduct?
That was code of conduct.
Code of conduct, yeah.
What's the pleasure on the social media?
I have no changes. Do you, anybody else have changes on that? I didn't have any changes on that.
Sure.
We're gonna do code of conduct. And then we're gonna do-
The social media one.
Contain motions of the social media code of conduct. I mean, social media.
I move that we accept the social media code of conduct as written.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Motion made in second, discussion. Mr. Saban?
I'm fine with what's here now. I do think that this is pretty specific to more towards blogging than an
Yeah.
overall look at how to interact through social media, including all of the different websites that are available. I think that's something we should look at possibly later on down the road to come over with an overall social media code of conduct. But the way this is right now, at least it's something. That's a good start, so.
Mr. Buck?
Go ahead.
Mr. Bryant?
I have nothing.
There's a motion made in second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
Thank you. Okay, going back to item number 1, update from Route 44 development on the urban renewal plan and subsection eminent domain discussion and possible vote. you guys want to come on in, move around, I apologize for my back being against you guys.
It's just me.
Get all this out there?
Do we have people from body?
This should have been in a bigger room.
Come on in, we're ready for you.
Steve's working on some chairs, maybe.
Grab a couple chairs or?
Yeah,
Sure.
I don't know where I'm gonna grab them. We're gonna go in between.
While we get set up.
So, Mr. Chairman, while they're moving in, I think they're going to provide an update on the status of the permitting process to move the urban renewal plan forward. And Mr. McLaughlin is going to provide kind of an overview of what they were originally looking for as it related to the potential for a confirmatory taking, which will be tied into the eminent domain. But he does have some new information, so he may want to table that at this point, which I'll let him explain. So I guess to get started, George, since we have some additional people that are here, if you want to introduce your team to everybody?
Sure, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, my name is George McLaughlin. I haven't seen you folks in a while, so it's nice to see you. Happy 2018. With me is my partner, Bob Delholm, who I know you know, and also Bruce Haskell, who is one of our engineers. Thank you for having us in tonight. There was an issue, as you know, we've acquired two of the abutters parcels. We acquired the Tassinari parcel and we acquired the Allen parcel. I'm pleased to report that I think I've reached out to pretty much everybody around us and have started negotiations with them about acquiring their properties. And so we're moving forward on that. When we acquired the Tassinari property, what happened was it was coming up to buy their property, and there was a title issue that cropped up. And basically what cropped up, if I can use this, if this was the Tassinari parcel, what happened was there was a plan recorded from a fellow named Shurtleff, who there was like a 5,300 square foot little parcel on the back side of theirs that was supposed to be conveyed to them. There were plans recorded that the town actually signed off on that said, oh yeah, this is meant to go to Tassinari, et cetera, et cetera. But it didn't go. So I thought, originally our title expert said, well, why don't you just have the Redevelopment Authority do a confirmatory taking and that will straighten it out. And I talked to the Tassinaris and they said, yeah, that's fine, we'll sign a letter to the Redevelopment Authority, which they have, saying that, you can go ahead and take this and take it for $1. Route 44 has already paid us for our property, we're happy. But I did some additional research, and I want to ask you to table it tonight because I actually think that from a purely technical standpoint, even though Shurtleff, who's now deceased, meant to convey that to Tassinaris, there's a real question as to whether title ever was conveyed to them. And so I'm doing some additional title research to see, what the situation is with this little 5,200 square foot parcel. So, I thank you for your, for putting us on the agenda for this evening, but I was talking to Mr. Milanowski beforehand, and I said, let me just see the way this plays out. I want to look at Shurtleff's estate and see if maybe title still to that 5,200 square foot parcel isn't in whoever the heirs are under his estate. So that's where that stands. And then I guess the other update is we're moving ahead with the MIPA process. And we are going to be, we look to be filing our draft environmental impact report by late May. That's quite an undertaking, as you know. That involves, pulling together all of the information regarding traffic, stormwater, wastewater, regular water, greenhouse gases, et cetera, et cetera. I'm far from an expert on that, so Bruce Haskell can tell you what is going on behind the scenes there. But I guess the bottom line is that we're investing a lot of money, and we have a lot of engineers working for us, and we're going full steam ahead through the MEPA process so that we get all of our state permits for the project, so that we're in a position to start construction as soon as we possibly can. So on that note, I'll turn it over to Mr. Haskell to correct anything I've said or expand on it.
Correct, I'll speak.
1 second, just for clarification, you said the draft MEPA, you were gonna, environmental report, you're gonna by May?
Yeah, it's the draft, as you may know, in order to get your, state permits on the density of the project, you have to file what's called the draft environmental impact report. And that is the applicant basically telling the world at large, we plan on building this many square feet. That's going to have an effect on the environment. It's going to have an effect on traffic. It's going to have an effect on wastewater. We're going to have potable water in there. We're going to have water to deal with fire issues. We have to look at greenhouse gases. We have to look at all manner of things that when you put down a development like we're talking about, you just don't put it down, as we all know, and it doesn't have any effect on the environment. It has an effect on the environment. So what the draft environmental impact report does is it is our experts saying, we think that wastewater can be taken care of in this way. We think that the traffic can be taken care of this way. We think that, stormwater can be taken care of this way, et cetera, et cetera. And there is, that document is published, and there's a comment period for the public to comment upon it. And there's some back and forth. And then we take those comments and we address those comments. And what you hope to get out of that process is what's called a final environmental impact report. And we hope to get our, all of our permits from the state. When would that be? If we had the draft environmental impact report all set by, say, the feedback from the state by August, maybe we would have the final environmental impact report by October, November. So the bottom line is we're looking to get all of our state permits by the end of the year. And it's a very involved, expensive, thorough process. But as I say, that's just kind of the Reader's Digest version of it. And I'll let Mr. Haskell, as I say, correct or add on to or whatever, elucidate anything I've said.
I mean, I can answer any questions you have on it, but I mean, the way to think of the environmental impact report is they look at options, decide what the best option is, and then decide on mitigation for it. So all the things that we're talking about during the urban renewal plan about traffic and access and buffers and things like that all get looked at, get evaluated, and then options are sort of put out for that, for public comment, and a preferred option is put forward. So anything that has to be done, and then also the details of how are we going to get enough water for the development on the site? How are we going to deal with the wastewater on the site? So there's a lot more details that will come out for that have been advanced over the last 6 months or so.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, through
Yes.
do this team from the state, do they have a team that comes out to validate what you're saying to be true?
So the process with the state is that the report's submitted to the, so there's the state has already given a scope of work for this. The MEPA, is the Mass Environmental Policy Act office, gave a scope of work for this. So we have to address everything in that scope of work.
Okay.
And that scope
We
of,
followed the
draft, expanded environmental notification form and asked for a phase one waiver so we could do this project.
We did.
Part of that was that they gave us permission to do the urban renewal plan. And the second is that they came forward and put the scope of work of everything we need to study. So they spell it out in detail
Ahead of
what
time.
needs to be done. And that's what the team is. And, maybe if you could just describe, go over the consultants that are putting this all together, starting with VHB.
So I was going to say, so Bob and George have retained VHB as the lead consultant, who's also going to deal with traffic and some of the other issues out there. I'm just going to focus on there's 12 different issues. I'll focus on the big ones, but traffic, that's their specialty, and they're probably the top firm in the state, looking at alternatives and evaluation of different intersections, not just locally, but going as the project, as traffic moves away out there. Wright Pierce is working for them, and they're dealing with the water and wastewater infrastructure coming into the site. So in other words, how do we connect to the North Carver water district, and how do we have on-site wastewater disposal? They're working with Sanborn Head, which is a geotechnical firm who's looking at on-site wastewater disposal, where the appropriate site location for that leaching field would be on the site. And then the third firm is AHA, that is subcontracting, which looks at electric power. That's one of the more significant infrastructure things into the site. And then also, there's a lot of requirements in the certificate. The base project would use a certain amount of power to try to reduce that by doing, greenhouse gas reduction, to sort of program different things there. And there's a very big policy within the state to try to prove that they have to work their way through to try to demonstrate that the project is minimizing greenhouse gas impact. So there's actually a page-long list of options that have to be specifically looked at. Some of them are ridiculous, some of them are probably viable out there, so.
Okay. Any other questions? I know it's a lot to take in.
Well,
Bob?
through Mr. Chairman, when this MIPA is done, the draft environmental report, we're gonna get a copy of that submitted to us, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
The town gets copy, to the redevelopment authority, yes, you get one.
So that report will be available online for everyone to download and review. It'll be, multiple hundreds of pages, but it will be available for review. And there'll be, we'll have a hard copy within town hall for people to review.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
And will that include the names and addresses for public comment on that report to submit to the state? Is that on there too?
It'll have an address as to where you can provide a comment.
Yes,
too.
yeah, so. There's a notice that comes out with it that will be within the document that will say, please provide all comments to, the MIPA office,
Okay,
they'll give you
yeah.
the exact contact name and everything.
So
It's the same process that we went through for the environmental notification form, it's the same, probably will be the same person.
So I have a question. Where the application is moving forward and everything, the responsibilities or the actions that this board needs to take in that application, is this all really you guys providing the information to the state from the application that we
This
provide?
is 100% on our development partner, which is Route 44, which is tied into our agreement we have with them. So there's really no action for the board to take, the redevelopment authority to take, nor is there any required action for the town to take. Now, obviously, we'll review the document. If we see any items in there that we want to alert them to, we will do that. But there's really no obligation or expense from the town or the redevelopment authority, pretty much for the next 9 months. And then, once the report's done, then they'll get state approval to go forward, then they have to come and do local approval for any actual development project. But for right now, this is again the concept that's gonna be there and what the impacts are of that master plan. There's nothing in the plan that's gonna be set in stone as to the corner of the building is gonna be specifically here. So it won't get into that level of detail.
Got it.
And I think, do we have a concept plan?
Yeah, we have a,
This is kind of an updated one where they've been working with their consultants to kind of do some revisement. Now, keep in mind, this plan can move. These buildings can twist, turn, be diagonal when the whole thing's all said and done. We have this development area for them to develop in. And once they have an actual end, they look at specifically laying out the road, that'll then go through the planning board process and also to the redevelopment code.
Yeah, this
Where's
is
Amazon going?
hopefully right there.
Yeah.
What this is, we showed you folks different concept plans as we were going through the urban renewal process. And as a result of different feedback we've had from our different engineers and what have you, this plan is the preferred alternative right now. This is the plan that they feel at this point works the best from a traffic standpoint, from a wastewater standpoint, et cetera, et cetera. And basically what it shows is this. I see the Tushers are here. I see Mrs. Tusher. I don't know if Mr. Tusher, how are you, sir? Nice to see you. We have them outlined in red here just to emphasize that their, property is still kept out. And what we are looking.
And George, on that, just again, I just want to emphasize, is the Tusher's property is not touched in this layout at all.
That's correct. They're out. It's staying as it is pursuant to their wishes and pursuant to your board's, wishes. They were carved out of the urban renewal plan area. And basically, here's North Main Street. What we're going to do is we're going to put in a separate access. We've studied these wetlands here. We went in and did very detailed studies, and we feel that we can fall underneath the 5,000 square feet of alteration. So we felt that from a traffic standpoint, not us, but VHB felt from a traffic standpoint, we should isolate the main access up here away from the Dunkin' Donuts Plaza. And obviously, this is a concept plan right now, but one of the big things is we're looking at is straightening out the traffic issues there, so that'll all be straightened out. We'll have a dedicated access in here, and then we'll probably the main access will be off Montello Street here. This is the Tassinari property which we own. That's the Allen property that we own. And then a secondary access will be up here, which is where the main access to the property is right now. So that's what our current thinking is. And
Excuse me, can I interrupt?
Sure.
Mr. Chairman? That little Y you got there is one way in, but they're not supposed to go left to up that road.
Yeah, we've got to, we were talking about, we've got to put some
Yeah,
clearer markings
yeah.
on here. We were talking about that upstairs when we looked at this
Right.
plan, definitely, we understand that.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
we hear you.
There was
That's
a lot
not-
of conversation.
Yeah, no,
right.
that's, we hear you on that, because this is, again, a concept, and they were really more focused on the building layouts than really the details of
Okay.
in this building, we're showing 1 million square feet here, 60. But it could be divided into two 500,000. I mean, what the feedback from the engineers, from a geological standpoint, from a wastewater standpoint, from a circulation standpoint, and an access and traffic standpoint, they've decided that the best location for the biggest bulk of building should be approximately here, and then here are the other buildings. We've had good feedback from the from our broker and from the real estate community, because I think as we can all appreciate, whether for good or for bad, everything seems to be going wholesale. Everything seems to be, or a lot of things seem to be going Amazon's way, and it seems like everybody from Amazon to Walmart Jet to Wayfair to whatever, everybody is looking for regional warehouse distribution
Right.
centers. So the marketplace has been telling us that they just think this is a great location. It's a location where you can really lay down 1 million square feet and have the proper circulation, the proper number of loading bays, the proper parking, and the proper access.
I just have a question, Mr. Chairman. When I go by on the new 44 and I see Cisco, that's, how big, is there any relationship to that?
Yeah, but Cisco is 650,000 square feet.
Whoa, and that's
So-
a million.
So that's a million, yeah. So a million square
Wow,
foot building is a
big.
huge building.
Yeah, sure.
But we get a lot more land than they do over at Cisco.
Yeah, it kind of goes like this a
Yeah.
little bit, yeah.
Yeah,
But anyway, it's huge.
but that's a huge building.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's basically set up, I don't know what you know about that, but it's,
I don't,
basically, that's a 650,000 square foot warehouse, and it's set up kind of like a grocery store. A third of it, as I understand, is for kind of things that don't need to be refrigerated. A third of it is for things that need to be slightly refrigerated, and then a third of it is the, the deep freeze, the stuff that has to be frozen, is the way that's broken up. But we're very excited about it. I mean, as I think Michael said, we really look at this as being partners with the town. The town has been great to work with. I hope you feel as though we've been good to work with. We've really spent a lot of time and effort and money making this site work, and we're very bullish on it. So.
George, just a question. This has changed a little bit from our initial conceptual ideas of what you presented at the URP when we went through that process to get that done. The redesign of this new conceptual, and is that being driven by not only the market, but also the process that you're going through with the MIPA environmental impacts?
Yes.
Yes.
So it's gonna change some more.
I'll let
Is that
Bruce.
hard to say?
I don't.
Yeah, I mean, we have to look at alternatives in the MIPA process, as I said before. So one of the alternatives was just to push, during the initial process, there was a lot of comments about buffers and things like that. So one of the things was to push things down a little bit further. I think one of the other concepts, with the Tushers were not in part of the renewal plan at the end, after that sort of changed, maybe some of the concepts that were put out before and trying to create buffers. But again, I want to point, this is really a concept. There is nothing that says there's going to be, as Mike said, the corner of the building right here. It's really just how much can we fit on the site, and provide those appropriate buffers and provide the appropriate
I
mitigation
think it's
controls.
important that people understand that this is only conceptual.
Oh, very conceptual.
There's nothing that says that any of the environmental impacts ain't gonna move this thing around 180.
Right.
Right.
Right, and to that point, Mr. Chairman, we go through the MIPA process, and they tell us, okay, we feel, after the comment period from the town, from the public, that, we approve you to build X number of square feet, and, we feel as though you've dealt with all of the various issues to be able to build X number of square feet. But then, as Michael said, we come back to the town and we start to go through the process of, hey, we want to build the X square feet, and we want to put the corner of the building here, and we want to have this there, et cetera. And then the town has, for want of a better phrase, a second bite at the apple to say, no, we don't like that. Why don't you move it a little over here, and why don't you do this and do that? And
I think that's a good point, because a lot of people, from what I've heard and I've talked to when we were going through URP, figured that was the end of all. And you still have to go through the local granting authorities, planning board, conservation, and all that stuff as you apply for your permits. So I think that's important to understand that. Anybody else got any questions, comments?
I have one. Little bump out coming across to Main Street there, they just put in that
Yeah.
little thing. Somebody owns that land. Are you going to buy that property, or, I know this is just conceptual at this point?
yeah, no, we're gonna try and buy all of the property, and I mean, so far, we're batting, 1,000. We bought the Tassonaries, we bought the Allens, I spoke with the Tushers, and, I had nice discussions, I think, with the Tushers, and a nice, I see a positive nod there from Mrs. Tusher. And they said, no, we want to stay, and if you could just respect that, and so we did. I mean, I like to treat people as I would like to be treated, and so I've been going around, talking to everybody else.
And how big is the water tank? Do you have a?
We have no idea at this
No
point.
idea?
No, I mean, that's one of the biggest things. We have to meet with the water commissioners and understand what that's gonna be and what the sizing of that's gonna be.
Was that gonna give you pressure to pull that water in from the
It's
town water?
predominantly for fire suppression, so if there's a fire in a portion of the building, there's enough water in the tank, under enough
okay.
pressure to feed
Oh,
feed
okay.
that building, and that's the predominant reason. There's other things that are gonna have to happen, but there's a lot that has to go into deciding that.
So, Mr. Chairman, through you, Bob asked a couple of questions too I was interested in. You say you could move things around and so forth, and that corner might not be there, but you can't do anything that the environmental MEPR says. You can't have these guys on a
So I-
planning board say, oh yeah, that's okay.
Well, no, I think, so think about it as like when the URP was approved, there's design criteria in the URP. There's sort of this, what the redevelopment authority wanted to see out here. MEPA throws another level of the design criteria in
Right.
there, and it's more of a technical, how big the stormwater basins are gonna be, how much solar, or other things are gonna, it's those kinds of things. So if the planning board says, hey, we're throwing out and they step over with something to MEPA, then we have the ability to go back to there could be a little bit of an iteration process there. But it's not like, they're just throwing a sort of a general design criteria on there. That's sort of a cookbook how we would put this thing together.
Okay.
The MEPA is really a technical review, so they don't really deal with people's opinions per se. They're looking at the science, they're looking at the traffic analysis, they're looking at the water usage. So those are the types of things that they will require the additional analysis to be, which is what's in their scope. But if somebody says, well, I don't like the project, then somebody says, I don't like the project. But there's nothing for MEPA to review on that, because the project's been approved by the town, so now it's up to go through the state process to deal with those technical pieces.
Any other questions, concerns? Do you guys have any other input that you can provide us at this time?
No, we're just, full steam ahead, I guess. We're gonna have our engineers, spending the next, 2 or 3 months putting this exhaustive document together, and we're gonna be going over it, with the town, sharing it with the town, and seeking comments so that, it can be even a better document. And, then our chronology, as I say, our game plan is to file it by the end of May. And if we get it filed by the end of May, then we think we'll get feedback and get preliminary approval from the state by August. And then we'll file our final environmental impact report and hopefully have our, all of our state approvals by, November, end of this year. And, continue on.
I have a question for you guys, related in your second phase permitting that was issued by the planning board. Just a little update for the community and stuff. Could you give us an update on what that process, how that process is moving? It was quite a substantial amount of fill and grading that you were gonna bring in. Could you give us a brief update on that, Bob?
I'll let Bruce has all
Okay.
the more detailed information. on
Yeah, I think so. So the
frontage.
approval the project that the Phase 2 special permit that the planning board issued had 3 or 4 components of it. One was to bring in additional fill. I don't off the top of my head remember what the percentage or where exactly we are with that, but that's been going on and sort of consistently since the time that the planning board issued that special permit. Out there, and then we're still working in sort of the same general area that we were before to bring that up to grade. One of the things we've got to look at is where, how we move forward next, but that permit had truck limits and the like there that we've all been, working within. It also had cleaning up, there's an old stump dump on the site, so we've submitted plans to DEP to remediate that. That requires their approval, and, the intent is to get that approval and move forward with that during the upcoming summer construction season. And then there's a large wood pile that's out in the site down next to these wetlands here. And the intent is to do that concurrent with the stump dump out there and sort of move forward with that. We're still, we've been consistently getting soils. The deliveries have actually, sort of been much more consistent than they were. I'm pretty sure the plan, I know the town planner gets copies of the letters and the correspondence on that. We did also, the final thing is we did go to the earth removal board and receive their approval for, moving forward with the project, which was one of the conditions that we had out there. But I certainly could give you those numbers. I just don't
Yeah.
off the top of my head.
Do your curveball, but I thought it was a good
No,
idea.
it's-
no,
it's
it's good.
probably, I mean,
Yeah.
just in terms of an order of magnitude, it's probably around 125,000 tons of material that's been brought in to date. I think you brought up a good point, Bruce, just to talk about giving visibility on the remediation that will take place around that historic wood waste landfill that's been present there all these years, and in particular the stockpile of the tree logs is. It'll be nice to get those processed, because if you recall from the site visit, they were somewhat haphazardly placed over the years. So in terms of a make safe, that'll be a big improvement as well. And, you know, and I think relative to the total volume underneath that phase 2 special permit as well, you're right, it was a fair amount of material. It's not expected, and again, it's what's approved. But I think practically speaking, in terms of our intent is to really bring in the right amount of material in order to just stabilize the site. And as you may recall from the visits, when the resources were when the sand and the gravel was mined out of there, you know, all the natural resources really were depleted down to almost the natural water table. So the intent is to bring enough adequate fill, suitable fill, to get us up and above that. And that's been taking place in a very controlled manner. And the feedback we've gotten has been generally, I'd say not generally, very positive. In particular, the town's environmental consultant and engineer are very pleased with the manner in which the work is being done, as is DEP's Southeast Regional Office.
Good. Anything else from anybody? Any questions, concerns for these guys?
Mr. Sinclair, can I
Yes.
answer a question?
Sure.
On the Tassinari land, can I go back to that for a second?
Sure.
Would you show me on that, you got the conceptual here of whereabouts is this? What area are they speaking about?
Tassinari is right here.
Yeah. But how much, you said how much?
That piece, the
5,200 square feet? And
Yeah,
where
at
is
the-
that?
It's at the back.
So is it just a straight across flat?
Yeah,
or
just,
is
it's
it
straight
triangular?
across. No, yeah, it's straight across. Doesn't
Okay.
affect your property. It's,
Yep.
it's right across the back
Right,
there.
So you don't know, are you sure that that belongs to them, or could it be the construction guy?
No, Borowski, no, it isn't him, because what happened was, Shirtliff sold to Tassinari,
Yeah.
and they recorded a deed, but they also recorded a plan, and the plan and the deed didn't match, so they recorded another plan, and the second plan they recorded, what they should have done is they should have recorded a second deed, but they never did it. And then what happened was, Shirtliff sold to a fellow named, I think it was McCarthy, and then because he owned all this property back here, and when he sold to McCarthy, he left out the 5,200 or 5,300 square feet from that deed to McCarthy, because he thought, in his mind, I've already sold it to Tassinari. Then McCarthy turned around and he sold to Borowski, and again, it was left out because they just copied, when McCarthy sold to Borowski, he just copied the description in the deed from Shirtliff to him. And so I really think what's gonna happen is, I'm probably gonna be picking up the phone and talking to the heirs of Shirtliff and saying, hey, you know, your uncle or your grandfather, your father, whatever, here's all the stuff. You know, I can either bring an action, acquire title in the land court, or I can pay you a couple of dollars to sign this deed to straighten out almost like a Scrivener's error.
Okay, so you're gonna research that anyway?
Yeah, yeah,
Come to a total agreement, so, okay.
right, but I mean, from your standpoint, here's your property, it's right on
Yeah,
the
okay.
back there. That's what we're talking about. And so I think it's just, you have this every once in a while. They call them orphan parcels, that just through lawyer's error or Scrivener's error, just, you know, somebody always has to own every piece of square inch of earth on the planet. It's just that sometimes you have these pieces that just fall between the cracks. And that's what happened here. It didn't go to Borofsky. Shirtlift's gone. Shirtlift's lawyer's gone. You know, now we'll just have to track down the heirs and figure it out.
Yep. All right, well, that's what I was curious about.
Yeah.
So you'll let us know when you're gonna have a meeting as far as clarifying that? Through-
Well, I-
Or be in the, on the,
If it's on the RDA, we'll definitely keep you informed.
Yeah.
We'll have you here.
all right. Yeah, but I would like to go. Thank you,
Good.
appreciate it.
Okay.
I have
Yes, sir.
one last question here. All right, with that little slither of property there, if you come back here to the redevelopment authority and you ask us to take that, that's a possibility too, correct?
Yeah, I suppose that is a possibility, because it's, you know, it's one of these little dangling issues. I mean, the question becomes, you know, it's not worth anything. I mean, it's a 5,200 square foot landlocked parcel. So,
It's worth something.
yeah, it's worth something, but, it's, you know, the question, I guess, is an economic one. Do I strike a deal, you know, just to get the issues on the table? Suppose I find all of the heirs of Shirtlift, and they say, oh yeah, we want $1 million for that parcel. Well, I mean, that's the reason why you have the power of eminent domain, because you have to be able to, you can't let an entire project be held up by people who are trying to take advantage of the system. And, but I mean, we're, you know, we're getting ahead of ourselves. I mean, I don't, we'll just have to see what happens there.
Excuse me, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but to put one more layer on the cake, if that piece of property that we're talking about right now does become sticky widget, what does it mean to the project anyway? How much does it impact your plans?
It may not impact us. That's what I was saying. So my attitude is, hey, maybe I just say, hey, Shirtlift's heirs, you can have your 5,200 square feet, but you have no access there, so you're gonna have to come in by helicopter. So,
Right.
you know, from a practical standpoint,
It's a moot point.
it's a moot point. It may not even be worth, and that's what I was getting at, when the question was asked. It's kind of an economic question. Is it worth doing a taking? It's not worth being held up by the heirs of Shirtlift, and maybe you just leave it there.
Right.
And forget about it.
Who's paying the taxes on this little parcel of land?
Tassinari paid the taxes the whole time, for years, okay? So, when I studied that, and that's a good question, Tassinari, all the years they lived there, they paid the taxes on that 5,200 square foot parcel.
It's the owner.
Okay.
So now you're paying those taxes?
Right.
Correct?
Right.
On that?
Right,
Okay.
and from a practical standpoint, see, this is another thing, I mean, not to get into law school, but I could say to Shirtlift's heirs, hey, you know what? Tassinari owns that by adverse possession, because he was the one, that's where he had his vegetable garden, that's where he had this, that's where he had that. But again, how much money does it cost you to try an adverse possession case in Plymouth Superior Court? I mean, it's just, you know, in the final analysis, economics drive all of these things, so, it may make sense to just leave it there.
Sure.
Yeah,
Save it.
I just had one question. You said that you've come to agreements with the two properties. Are there more that you still have to acquire?
Oh, yeah, there's, you know, there's all the properties on the fringe, but I've been talking to everybody. I picked up the phone and started talking to, you know, different people.
Do you have to have deals with all of them before you put in your draft plan?
No,
No? Okay.
no.
All right.
What's that, guys?
You know what, this has kind of been haunting me because, I think that one of the things that we have to look at is, I thought that before any permits or whatnot, people have to be up to date with their taxes and everything, before you get a permit issued to the town, is that correct? I mean, typically,
I know on the planning board, before a permit comes in on the planning board, we check the taxes being paid. and normally they all are.
I just
But we're not
giving
even
you
at that point.
a heads up,
What's the heads up, though?
$55,000 from 29 from 2007 for One Park Ave, and 26 up until this year. So it's
Well,
55. I just checked tonight. One Park Ave, isn't that your property?
No, I think they're 3-4 park.
Yeah, wait, no, One Park Ave, I think that's Walsh.
Is that Walsh?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I'm
Yeah.
glad I got that solved.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, no, we,
No, the address of this is 3-4.
3-4.
3-4?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Just making sure, because like I said, when I did a record search here, it came up as One Park Ave owes that amount of money, and that kind of concerns me.
well, good, take it by tax title and then give it to us.
Maybe they do something about it.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's, let me say this. You know, we pay our taxes, we've been paying our taxes all along, believe me, the money we're paying here, the taxes, you know, they're not insignificant, but, I mean, we pay them religiously. Having said that, though, the taxes were just due on February 1st.
Yeah.
So, maybe Walsh's check just got, I mean, sometimes, you know how it is, people just drop the ball, and I'm sure Walsh's will be paying their taxes.
Okay. You guys all set?
I'm good.
I want to thank you guys for
Good.
coming in.
All right, thanks,
Appreciate
folks.
the update.
Good to see everybody. We'll be in touch.
Talk soon. Thank you very much. Okay. That being done. Next on the agenda, discussion of Roberts Way property that will be provided accurate information that was not properly discussed at last meeting, and for the CRA to consider reconsidering rescinding an earlier action based on inaccurate information provided by a member. So since our last meeting, I've reached out to the town, Mike Malinowski. I've been in talks with the chairman of the Board of Selectmen, and the process from what I thought is that we just go to the selectmen and ask for the property.
Because I think that's what Bob had suggested happens.
That's what was out there. So the biggest thing is that is not the process, and I'm going to have Michael talk about that proper process, because for the board members to know, there was an email that was sent from Bob instead of from the chairman to the Board of Selectmen, and to bring this in front of them, and that was supposed to be my job. It goes through the chair, that has never changed, but Bob did it his way, so that's fine. I was in talks with the town administrator, asked me what was going on, we met, we discussed it. The process is not that way, it's not from a board member after a board votes to move forward on an issue.
It's from Tops.
The process, I'm gonna have Michael explain
Oh,
it.
okay, but
Because
it
I
is
don't wanna
Tops.
misconstrued anybody or misdirect anybody.
Okay.
But I do wanna be very clear that, anything that's voted on from this board, it is my direction as chairman, or whoever sits in this seat as chairman, to take that action that is given by the board members. Otherwise, we're gonna have chaos and different emails and this and that, and people want different directions, and commenting on multimedia sites that, inaccurate statements that this is Will's way. It's not Will's way, we work as a board. That being said, I will say that I'm a little frustrated with you, Bob, on your social media inaccuracies. I asked you before if you please get your information correct. And it takes discussions. It takes talking. You want to feed the inaccuracies to the people in the social media, that only hurts progress from this board's actions. Getting frustrated with it. Means that I have to spend numerous hours with the town trying to fix it, which requires the town to take time out of people's budgets to address it. Want you to be accurate.
I'd like to
You're
know,
not being accurate.
I'd like to know what I wasn't accurate about.
You can start with saying that Will wants a sewage treatment plant in Crystal Lake. That was not what was stated here. Look at the tape and be accurate. I
That's what
told you,
presented.
I told this board, and it was very clear at this board that those actions were a discussion that was done by TOPS years ago. And prior to that, it was from the IDC. So that tells you how long ago it was. And then from the BBC, that if there was an issue that was down in Crystal Lake that was brought to those boards on nitrate levels. I'm not a nitrate level guy, which you insinuated that I know all about that. I don't know that. But your insinuation that Will wants to save it for a sewage treatment plant is an inaccurate statement. It's not even from a top statement. So get your information correct.
Mr. Chairman, if
Sir.
I could, I refuse to respond on Facebook to inaccurate statements.
Me too.
But there have been a lot that are out there, and hopefully with this code of conduct, as the board's passed, we won't have those anymore. But, even with myself, Mr. Feldman has been stating that I'm the self-appointed executive director, which there's no fact to that. Again, that's a fallacy.
We voted for that.
Which is a lot. I cannot appoint myself as the executive director. The board voted on that, and Bob, you did vote opposed to that. But again, to state that I'm a self-appointed, incorrect statement. I think it's also important to recognize too is that, and Will and I, the chairman, had a conversation. For the past few meetings, there's been a major investigation that the town's been working with a regional partnership that we're doing, and that has been monopolizing a lot of my time. So I haven't been able to make the meetings, and Will and I, are communicating on that. So there were reasons that why I wasn't at the last few meetings, versus again some of the statements that have been artificially made that are out there. But I think just focusing back on the agenda topic that's here,
Yep.
which is really a discussion of
Excuse me.
Robert's Way.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to respond to him,
You
because
can.
I think he did have some inaccurate statements himself. When we sat here in this room, and you sat right here, okay, I asked that the secretary be the one that decides with the motions, and you said, well, that's my job. And I said, why? Paraphrasing. And you said, because I'm the executive director. And you said,
Bob,
let me finish.
First of
No,
all, you're getting your
excuse
facts
me.
mixed up. Now, I need to
Excuse
jump in
me.
here.
No, I
What
did-
happens when
Mr.
you go
Malinowski,
through a
please.
reorganization session? When you go through a reorganization session, what has to happen is the board members step down and they let staff run the meeting during the nominations for the board members.
But you were
What
not
happened-
staff. I'm sorry, I'm gonna interrupt. You were not staff.
Well, excuse me, I am staff to the town.
You're not staff for the redevelopment. We are a separate entity here, Mr. Malinowski.
Okay.
And I have to say this, is that you said the reason why was that we don't have a town planner. The town planner was the executive director, therefore you are the executive director. That's what you stated at that meeting. You can watch the tape, because that's what you said. Okay,
Bob,
that's why I'm saying you're
Bob,
self-appointed.
again, this is your typical what you're doing, apples and oranges, apples and oranges. What we're talking about is the appointment of the board members to elect a chair, vice chair, and also a treasurer. And I did run that meeting as is responsibility when someone steps down to do the appointments. Then, after that's all done, the meeting gets turned over to the chair once they're done. Later on in the meeting, as you may recall, and please look at the tape, you will find out that there was a motion made by the board to appoint me as the executive director. Okay, so it's not a self-appointed executive director. The board voted to do that. But again, we're getting off topic, we're getting
Well,
off agenda.
I'm just saying,
The agenda here is
what I
to talk
stated was
about
correct.
Robert's Way.
Was correct.
It's
All
not
right,
again.
so let's move on.
So Robert's Way, the discussion is, and I guess after I watch the tape, what I'd like to understand is that what Mr. Feldman presented was that you have the right to go to the selectmen and ask them to transfer Robert's Way to the Redevelopment Authority, and then you can go out and sell that. and you were figuring out how you were going to sell that, whether you would just put it out there for 30 days or 45 days or something?
No, that's a different property.
Okay.
You're talking about forestry property, total difference.
Okay, let's focus on Robert's Way.
Well, I'm just saying, you just
No,
confused
I'm
the
asking
two.
you. No, I'm
That's
asking you.
why.
I'm asking you. Would you kind of, because I want to understand what your intent was with Robert's Way.
Okay.
So what is the process you're looking to
Okay.
do for that?
So the redevelopment authority, I looked at properties, I brought it to the redevelopment authority, redevelopment talked about it for a couple of different meetings. Okay? Looks like viable property for us to build on, to put affordable housing, all right? And then when we got through that discussion even further, Brian said, well, let's keep our options open of possibly selling it, all right? And I have no problem, I don't have a problem keeping our options open, okay? The board voted here, all right, to go to the selectmen and have me be the representative of the board at that time to bring it to the selectmen. I thus sent a letter directing by the board to the,
And this was to use the CPC funds for housing?
that would have to be discussed after the fact. We can't discuss anything until we have the property,
Okay.
but that's a possibility.
So
We did discuss that.
The property's not under the control of the Board of Selectmen, so I guess that's the first thing that I want to correct. The Selectmen do not own that piece of property. Even though you said they do from a tax title standpoint, they do not.
Who owns it?
Right now, it's under the care and custody of the tax collector.
Okay. So they haven't taken it by tax title yet?
So they have.
Okay, so this Board of Selectmen have control
No, they
of,
don't.
okay. So are we gonna go to, so you're saying we have to go to the tax collector to give us that property?
No, I'm not.
Okay, so please enlighten us of how we do that.
Okay. So once a property, we have multiple properties in the town that are tied in the tax title. And they're in tax title if they're more than a year late on their property, and then we go through the process of moving that along. Tied into that, we have several properties that are scheduled to be auctioned off that we can move forward with. We have properties that are in tax possession, we have properties that are in tax title. So the property that you're talking about right now requires a town meeting vote to move that piece forward. The selectmen don't have the control for that. Nor do the selectmen have the control on where the CPC funds are to go, which you were proposing to be used for that. So there are steps that have to happen before we can just have a rogue attempt to try to sell off property. And then, the process that you were trying to describe on selling off the property is the redevelopment authority just can't sell off property. As you said they could.
That was a discussion that we had related to keeping the options open to the property that we're talking about. I think you're confusing the forestry property again
No, I'm
with
just
this
talking in
one.
general property
So-
right now. So the process for selling off property is that the redevelopment authority cannot sell it to any individual person that's out there. They actually have to post the property into the state's website for disposal of property once it's been declared surplus. And the only way the property can be declared surplus is to go to town meeting. So to go to the selectmen and thinking that they were going to release the property that night to transfer it to the redevelopment authority, it's not the proper process. And what we're trying to do, and it's really important, is that we don't want to mislead the public. We want the public to understand step A, step B, step C, step D. And basically, the steps that you had there were somewhat made up. And that's one of the issues why we're spending a lot of time making sure that there's transparency and that all the information that's presented is properly correct. So there's no confusion going forward.
So how are we selling Forest Street then?
I'm not on Forest Street right now, I'm talking, what's on the agenda
Well,
right now
you just
is
said that we
Robert's
can't
Way.
sell property, but we're selling Forest Street to an individual,
No.
possibly whoever comes before us.
You went forward and described how you were going to sell it in the way that you've described the other night, and then doing that process is incorrect, and I haven't had a chance to update you on that, but I don't, that's not on the agenda tonight, it's just Robert's Way.
Okay, so what you're telling us is that, because this is, the thought process of the redevelopment authority in the past is that if we get property given to us, it was a means for us to sell the property, to make money, to give a portion to this, back to the selectmen in the town, all right, and we take a portion of that when we sell property. But the way you're saying now is a different process than in the past.
I wasn't here when those previous processes were done. What I'm telling you is what the law is going forward. And again, that's why I'm here to help advise and to lay out those steps that are there.
Can I, Mr. Chair?
Yep.
I've been on this committee a long time.
Mhm.
It all begins, tax collector decides they're gonna release some properties. There's a committee called TOPS, Town-Owned Properties.
That's correct.
They meet, they look at those properties. and they
Before it goes to town meeting.
Exactly.
Yep.
For the best decision. Maybe it'll go to the Recreation Committee. Maybe it'll go to the redevelopment or someplace else. Once all that is together and decided, and those people on tops have it together, for example, it might come to us, one piece of property, right? It was recommended, okay? So our town planner, Jack Hunter, quote unquote, he would then ask our committee, we would take a vote on it, he would then make an MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, which would then be presented, the chairman would go, town planner and so forth, to the selectmen. It has on it a 10% retain. We also have the opportunity to get any sort of fees. For example,
Whatever our
Roberts,
costs are.
Forest Way, Forest Street, any cost that we extended would come back to us in that. Once the selectmen decide, yes, they take a vote, but it has to go to town meeting, and you only have 2 chances at it, April and then the fall one, and that's it. If you
Just
miss,
April.
if you miss that, you gotta wait. That's the way it goes. Once the selectmen, through the town meeting, they put it on the town meeting agenda, et cetera, and the town votes yes, it comes back and it doesn't go through the legalese that the selectmen prepare, and we do have our own our own attorney, etc. It becomes our property to do what we will with it.
Well, you would discuss that also at our meeting, that it's gotta go to town meeting,
Yeah.
all right? But it was vote.
Don't
No,
skip
no,
all the
no,
pieces.
no,
I
I'm
just
saying,
said.
that's what I'm saying, is that was discussed too,
Yeah.
that we need to get it to the selectmen as quickly to go ahead
That's
and
right.
find out.
Because
to
of
get-
April
So
town
they
meeting.
know, what's going on, where we're going with this, okay?
But you gotta
So-
have that MOU first. You
But
gotta-
that's the distinction, where you're going with this, okay?
Yeah.
It's the selectmen's responsibility to determine what property they want to release and not release after a town meeting vote. And they have, and this property has been reviewed by the TOPS committee, and this property hasn't been released. And so there's processes that are there, and, you know, I did share your statements that you made on, both online and also on cable with town council, and the process you laid out for disposing the property is inaccurate. And what I want to do is that, you know, a vote was made to go forward and do this, and all the pieces weren't there, nor do you have the CPC support for this, because they haven't voted on this, and they are already working on several housing initiatives, or one major housing initiative that we're using to utilize the money that's down there, that they're part of, and they're the only ones that can release their money. Not the selectmen, not the redevelopment authority, not Bob Feldman. No one else can bring an article to town meeting but for the CPC. So the bottom line is, there's a lot of activity that's happening behind the scenes. And when you start blogging with information that you think is right, but you don't have the experience because you haven't asked, or you haven't, you know, tried to have a conversation with me that I can explain this, then that leads into misinformation. And the misinformation is what the public has. And what I want to do is, I'm recommending that the board rescind its vote or direction on Robert's Way, and allow for at our next meeting that I can take a step-by-step walk through the process as to how we properly dispose of property in the future, which is also going to tie into the forestry piece, because that has to go back to the
Right,
drawing board
right.
based upon what's there. And then I think that there was a vote, but we can't find it in the minutes from the
Wade
redevelopment
Street.
authority that passed before for Wade Street, to turn that back to the town, that we've decided we don't have a viable way of selling that that's gonna benefit the town, so we want that to go back into the town coffers that are there. So
And
again, that's
that
my
was-
recommendation.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman. That whole Wade Street, there was actually a couple that I found on the account, assessors, that is still under the RDA's
Bob, when you
standpoint.
find things, just so you know, you're finding this amount of information.
Right.
And you're trying to write a novel on this amount of information, and you missed the whole story. And you missed all the facts. So yes, you can find a sheet that shows tax title, what's in there. It's not the whole story. And the point we're trying to make is.
From the assessors website.
Excuse me. That's one piece of information, that's one part of the story. There's a whole bunch of processes that go into that. And that's what we want to make sure that before someone goes out and says something, that they have the factual information, all the story to provide to the public, because then it's misleading. You may not intentionally be trying to mislead the public, I want to give you that, but the fact of the matter is the results are that you are misleading the people. And that's what we need to stop. And I think with the code of conduct and everything that's done there is a way to stopping that. Again, the recommendation here is you rescind your vote on Robert's Way. And at the next board meeting, when we come back in here in March, is that I'll provide an update as to how to properly dispose of property, and then everything's laid out, and everybody knows what the rules are, versus a blogger going on there and saying what they think they know, which is, again, one little smidgen of the story.
Last thing. Will had already said the TOPS committee hasn't been doing anything for a long time with this.
I did
mean,
make that
yeah.
statement, but that's a misstatement. The TOPS representatives with the selectmen and Michael Milanowski and Meg and them have been working on these piece of properties.
We have a
committee?
lot of stuff going on that you may not be aware of that's happening behind the scenes. As we have to go to land to low value, we have to deal with DOR with all of these properties. We are finally getting this thing under control, and we've been working on it for the last couple of years. Had you asked, you would have known that. But you assumed, based upon this little bit of information, that you knew what was happening. And again, misinformation is out there. Again, my door is always open, come in and ask, I've always talked to you, and I'll give you the whole story.
Okay, so we
Well,
have.
I have a
Yes,
comment,
sir.
because you just mentioned Wade Street, and I worked on Wade Street for over a year and a half. And we offered that back to the selectmen, they did take that piece of property back, and then I went to offer it to conservation, and they balked at
And the
it.
Concom didn't
And
want
then
it.
they gave it back to the selectmen, and
So
that was.
what we don't have is, and I
What's
know
the
that
vote?
that happened, we just don't have the actual vote for that. So at our next meeting, we're gonna, I think Will wants to put that
Yep.
back on the agenda to revote that, so it doesn't get sold and it's protected. Even though it may not be with the conservation, it's still town property that's
Correct.
protected.
Okay,
So there's some record issue that needs to be clarified.
There's
Okay.
been quite a bit of research done on that.
Yeah.
From Jill and
so I would
others.
think
Well,
between.
the whole
between
purpose
the-
behind the conservation, if they took it over, it would protect it. It would not be sold.
Right, and it can't be
Okay,
sold unless
so
the selectmen.
I don't wanna
approve
get
it.
too much
That's
into the Wade Street, cause it's not on the agenda.
Understood,
So,
it's just, I just sat here for the
yeah.
last half an hour listening to
Yeah,
everybody
Yeah.
go off, so,
okay, so,
Are we
Thank you.
open to questions on Robert's Way?
no, not at this time. So the issue on the agenda now is that, to consider rescinding our earliest vote that we took last time. What's the pleasure of the board?
I'll make a motion to rescind the Roberts Way, proposal.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Motion made and second. Do we have any other discussion? Ms.
Are we
Joanna?
allowed to ask at least where
No.
that puts you now that, I'm
Not
just
right
trying to
now.
understand where that
We're,
puts you now
we're in
that
the
you took
middle
it
of a
out.
vote, so
Okay.
we're not there.
I'm going to have to vote. I can't vote, I wasn't here.
Do you have any comments on rescinding the vote?
No, I don't. I
Okay,
think
Miss-
if that's the way to go, Bob, now that all the facts have been known and should be known, and there's a process by which we should go through, then, I mean, we've done this how many times?
Okay, Mr. Block?
Yeah, I still feel that this is a good project that the RDA can use for these two properties. I think that bringing it up before the Board of Selectmen to let them know, hey, that we are interested in the property was a good idea, and that which we should have done, okay? And that if there was another proposal or a different way of doing things, it could have been brought out at that. But now that, like I said, I mean, if there's a different way of doing it, fine. But I'd like the end goal of turning around and coming back to us to make sure that we can do something and put it back on the tax rolls.
What was the two properties? Is Robert's Way, what was the second one?
They were both on Robert's Way, 0 and 1.
Yeah.
I guess I'm gonna have to read the minutes.
One's a long one, and it has a
Okay.
building on it, and the other one is just a square
Okay,
parcel, and,
Okay.
like I said, actually, with that, I have a question for the town administrator.
Go ahead,
Can I
we're
go
in
ahead?
discussion.
All right, that building, is that gonna be just demolished?
So, and I think this may help out some of the questions back there, is that right now, there are no plans to reuse these properties. They haven't been released by the tops, they haven't been released by town meeting, they haven't been released to the Board of Selectmen. Mr. Bellman wants to develop it as housing, but again, it hasn't been released. Nor is there a plan for a septic facility on the site. That was just one of the many things that it could be used for. When we're looking at the tops, we explore all different avenues. What could it be done, what could it not, can it be recreation, whatever. So there are no plans, first of all. The second is that the operation and maintenance department has gone out and done a site analysis. They've actually gone through and determined what the cost would be to demolish that building and to pack it up and take it away, and including taking the power line that feeds it there, which obviously is not working. So that is underway and being reviewed by our staff at this particular point. And I'm happy to say that I anticipate that to be removed sometime this spring.
And there's a boat and a truck there too, that looks like to be on our property too, there. That's,
We constantly clean up property around the town where people may have dumped things. Clearly, if we find out who dumps things or leaves things there, there will be some significant fines attached to those people, but the town does try to clean up its property.
Okay, any other discussion? Hearing none. Oh, Savick?
Yeah, just one, Mr. Chairman, and this is not on the agenda, but one of the things that we did vote on the last meeting was putting the Forest Street property back on the market. Does any of this affect what that does?
We're gonna have that on our next
Next
agenda to
agenda,
talk
that's fine.
about that, because the process we'll have the process explained to us. in
All right,
other
but
words.
currently it's on the market.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean we have to
Yep.
do anything with it, okay?
So, no other discussion on the rescinding the earlier vote. All in favor to rescind, say aye.
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 I'm
Those
not gonna vote
opposed?
on that.
no.
Those abstain?
Abstain, yeah.
So one abstention, Joanna. No
No.
from Bob. 3-1-1. Okay. Update from the executive, excuse me one second. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I
on
just
that
got,
page?
because I listened to his steps
Yep.
so many times, and when you said you were going back, so I didn't know if that was putting us kind of back to the first step,
Okay.
which I thought you were saying, that's all I was trying to clarify. Sorry.
Who's in charge of that property right now? You said they've
Hold on one
gone out
second.
and
Go
done
through
some
me, please.
feasibility studies out there. Is it feasible for them to put in a sewage treatment plant there? Have they done
Oh,
it?
wait, first of all, time out. Feasibility study, the only thing I
There
talked
is
about
none.
feasible was tearing down the building.
Oh,
That's
Okay,
it.
yeah.
Anytime, there has been zippo work, zero, zilch, nothing. No money, not a dollar, not a penny has been designed or looked at for doing any type of a septic or sewage facility there. That's not something the town has budgeted, that's not something the town intends to do. I think that is tied into a discussion 8-10 years ago when there are high bacteria counts from some of the septic systems that were there. But a lot of that has been cleaned, and therefore the water quality has been improved. So again, Bob's talking about 10-year-old information that he put out on Facebook, which no longer is probably relevant because your water quality has cleared up.
We've come a long way in 10 years.
Exactly.
I
probably
would
longer than 10
definitely give the
years.
like that, for real.
Sir, did you have something?
Who's actually in control of that property right now?
Tax collector.
The tax collector.
Okay. Moving on.
Thank you.
Update.
Read them all of us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Update from the
See, you wish that one of
executive
us sooner.
director.
Thank you.
So just to real briefly is that, I think we addressed just trying to make sure that we provide a public accurate information. It's critical to everybody. And there was some concerns, we not being there, tried to address that early. We are in the process of a major review of some information that I can't go into right now, which has kind of monopolized our time, plus getting the budget out. And I wasn't aware some of these things were gonna be discussed to the level they were. Had I known, or had Bob or somebody asked me, I would have provided a little bit more detail, but we'll make sure that changes in the future. And I think in our March meeting, we'll go over, how to do the forest property and what the steps are, which is really gonna mean it's gonna have to start over again.
Okay.
But, that's okay.
Right,
There's
despite
no
the fact that it had been on the market previously.
Correct,
Okay.
correct. And, a lot of times, things happen because people that's the way it was done before. And when this, in some of the comments that were made online, and I went to town council, we talked about it, we're like, no, we have to change the process for this, so we will. Also, in addition to that, probably over the next 6 months or so, I'm gonna be getting Stephen Cole more involved in the redevelopment authority. He was involved in my discussion with Route 44, so he's gonna kind of be shepherding the MEPA process from the town standpoint. And at some point, again, we'll have him more involved as things progress. But I also wanted to make sure that it was appropriate for him to get his department up and running appropriately before we add any additional work onto his. And since I had the historic knowledge, I wanted to make sure we continue to have accurate information going out that's there. So I see that changing in the near future. As it relates to all of these tax title properties, I can't stress enough, despite a little bit of information being released, there's a lot more that goes into it. The town is in control of what's happening. And to state that you can take tax title money from one-time sale and then hire people for it, you'd have to hire them for it, but it's one-time money, you have to lay them off the next year. So it's not really a solution to anything. It's use one-time money to buy a truck. Use one-time money to fix a sewer hole or a manhole or something like that. You don't use one-time money to hire staff. It's not in our policies, the town meeting approved, so therefore we can't do it. And again, you'd be in a position where you have to lay them off. So I just wanted to clarify that as well. From that standpoint, I'm around. If anybody ever has any questions, please call me, email me. And Joanne emailed me this weekend, and we were going back and forth. We still have some more conversations to have on
I
that.
think we will,
Which
yes,
we will.
will.
But actually, you know what, I am going to just address that a little bit, is that I have been working with the CPC committee, and we've having some very preliminary conversations on some of the housing money that they have available, and they'll continue to have over the near future. And to try to figure out how to put that to best use to create some additional senior housing in the town. Again, they're the ones with the pocketbook for that. It has to come from them. But we have a couple steps as to how to get there. It won't be at this town meeting, but there's a high likelihood at next town meeting there should be a solution to utilize some of their money to increase some housing production stock.
Can you tell us
in
how
the town.
much is in the housing?
Yeah, 300.
300 and something,
300 something?
Yeah.
300 plus. But there was also, I saw the 100 and something thousand was given to a trust.
We
Local
gave it
housing
back.
trust?
The local housing partnership gave it back because we never committed or did this affordable project. It was given to us for our affordable project to buy the houses that you would like to do.
Yeah.
So we gave it back because that was part of the agreement. The only thing in my mind, as I had told Mike, is it was only used once for about 97,000 for Mazzilli
Yeah.
to buy that house, Mazzilli Drive.
Right.
There's been no other, and I can't believe there's only 300,000. There should be like 500,000. You gotta be kidding
No,
me.
there was some other work that's been done over the years, I believe, but we have a plan, and it's gonna be multiple units of housing, and we just have to let that go through its process. So to say that there's money available, again, the CPC is the only one that can release that money, and there is a project that's in its infancy that we hope to bring to town meeting next year.
So each category, i.e. housing, recreation, and historical, you cannot, I'm asking you the question, you cannot move from one category to another, right? No, it stays in that category.
So once it's in that category, it's locked into that category,
Okay.
and you have to use, again, 10% for housing, historic, and open space.
Et cetera.
And it's locked in,
Yeah.
it can only be used for that purpose. There is other undesignated funds that can be used.
Key
for-
transferred, but all through town meeting. And I have a question for you. You talked about Wade Street.
Uh-huh.
Let me go, that's one, let me put that one down. You talked about Forest Street. Whatever, it's not on the agenda.
Right.
But I wanna ask the, Mike,
Executive director update.
can I, in part of your executive director update?
Yes.
You mentioned Forest Street and you mentioned the process. Well, that process, if you're gonna change it, that's already should be grandfathered, because we've gone through all these other processes that was okayed by the town, up to the point in town meeting approval as well. And everything that we've done so far, including the engineering costs, et cetera, allows us, it should allow us to go forward and put that house back on the land back on the market. When it is sold for whatever amount, and that information it goes back to the town, to the selectmen, 10% is the administrative cost. I'd have to look up the MOU, and any fees such as over $2,000 we paid for the engineering costs, et cetera, should come back to us. The rest goes to the town for the general fund, is my
Goes into free
understanding.
cash.
Yeah,
So
and
that process-
we've done this for
Yeah.
over $500,000 already.
That agreement that you've had with the town and the
Yeah,
10%,
yeah.
there being your agent, being the
Right.
selectman's agent, we're not talking about changing that.
Okay.
It's just the process is, once you get the property, is that it, in our next meeting, I'm gonna be educating you as to how we need to go forward from that. But we're not looking to change the MOU
Okay.
from the town standpoint for the 10% of the additional cost.
Okay.
I'm not proposing that at
Right.
all.
So, I guess I can't get into it, I have to wait till next time.
Yeah.
It'll be on there. You got anything else, Mike?
Question about,
What?
oh,
Well, it was,
Wade Street,
it's
you said.
Wade
Oh,
Street,
she's-
and are we missing a vote or anything? I mean, there was a vote,
No, there
all
was a-
valid taken?
we went through all the minutes, we couldn't find it, we've searched every minutes, and maybe somewhere it just hasn't appeared. And people have gone through every set of minutes for the last X number of years, and just can't find that vote. I believe it, you know, in your minds it took place, it's just that I have to have a piece of paper,
Yeah.
and then I can go to the assessors and then transfer it back to, and make that happen.
Why
I'll
did
give you,
the,
I'll give you a piece of paper.
why did the
I'll
conference?
give you a copy of the minutes.
You did?
I will get you a
Conservation?
copy
The
of,
minutes to turn it back
yes,
to the Board of Selectmen.
yes.
What happened
year
to
is
the
that?
conservation? Commission?
I'll have to look when I get home, but I have it under Wade Street
Good.
properties,
Good,
under my
good.
file.
No, that would be very helpful, thank you.
What,
Well,
can I
then
ask?
The
Mr.
selectmen then said, we're gonna give it back, we're gonna give it to the
Conservation.
conservation committee, and then they balked at it and gave it back to the selectmen.
Really?
That all happened within 1 month or 2 months of each other. So I mean, if you go between the selectmen and the conservation committee, you should find where they said no and gave it back to the selectmen.
Do you have to have a reason? Did they have to have a reason? Said no?
Why they said no?
Yeah.
Yeah, because that a certain party came and said that it was a stump dump and that it was, which is true, it is a
We're
stump
getting
dump.
way
And it's way-
away from the
yeah.
agenda here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lot
Okay,
of
sorry
things.
guys,
So-
put it on the agenda. The next time we wanna
To the
discuss this.
Executive Director, this TOPS committee, I'd like to be on it. I'd like to be able to research some of the properties, to look at to say, hey, these are possibilities. Because, I mean, if we, here as the RDA, could be a end user of that, I think it would be very,
They're on the,
very, very,
we had, when you had that, not you, but whoever, I think
Jack-
it was you.
Jack was
right?
on top.
Jack
I was
Hunter.
on, I'm on top.
He was the representative from the redevelopment. The recreation was, who's the girl?
Mary Ross.
Mary Ross.
And then we had Brooke from the conservation.
Yeah, yeah.
Or we might have Jim Nallen. Might have
Jim Nowen, yeah. There was
Yeah,
about
that-
4 or 5 people, wasn't there? About 4 or 5 people. It wasn't just 1 or 2, it was 4 or 5
bite my
people.
tongue.
From different committees who would, you know, talk about it, give their input and so forth in direction, so.
Yeah.
If you wanna, if he,
So let me, like I said, I'm gonna come back with an update at the next meeting, and then we can talk about it.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else, Mike? You good? All right.
I'll put him on the spot.
Treasurer's report, bills payable.
Oh, gosh, here we go.
I'm gonna run up to, I have a selectmen's meeting in 15 minutes,
Okay.
unless anybody else needs me.
No,
No,
thanks, Mike.
thank you, thank you. The bills payable tonight, I believe there was 2 checks that went out to the, Susan Hannon, for $75. As far as bills payable, I don't think there's any more than that, okay. The treasurer's report, of course, I wasn't here the last meeting, and, I gave you the whole entire year, as you can see. We ended up with, at the end of December, $1,679.19 in our checking account. The savings account is $25,109.91. And then for the URP, which is the savings account for that Carver Urban Renewal Plan, is $3,614.09. Mind you, if any more bills come in for that urban renewal, it's open to us that we need to go back to those people and they're gonna plant some more money into the savings account. That's the obligation, that hasn't changed. As far as interest on the savings account, as you can see, we gathered $26.70, and as far as the urban renewal plan, we only got $1.50. Let me do the second one, I don't know if you wanna vote on them separately, I would think you would. As far as the beginning of this year, it carried forward, and we only had one expense, $75 for the secretary, and we had interest on both accounts. So it's $1,604.19. Then the savings account went up $2.34 for $25,112.25. 9 cents on the urban renewal. It's $3,614.18. Does the secretary, do you have a copy of any of this?
I do not, actually, I was just.
All right, here you go. Just give it to her.
Thank you.
That concludes the reports.
Okay, what's the pleasure of the board?
I'll make a motion that we approve the, do we need to, as 2 things,
I
this year,
take them
last year?
separate, yeah, take them
You
separate.
can do them jointly, we've done it jointly in the
Okay.
All right, then I'll make a motion that we approve the treasurer's report as written.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any other discussion?
I have a question.
Yep.
All right, on the urban renewal plan account,
Yep,
is there a threshold of when we ask for money?
no. If we get a bill and we can't pay it, obviously, they'll come up, but we've never had any discussion on anything.
With the contractual obligations that we have with them, they're obligated to pay 100% of all bills.
No, I understood that, I just wasn't sure if we had a threshold that, hey, can you throw some more money into this, if it gets to 1,000 or what?
No,
So-
but I wanna tell you that.
Like an easy pass.
I want to tell you that at the end of the URP, when we are all done, whatever is in that account
back.
goes back to
Right.
them, yeah.
Okay, any other discussion? There are none. All in favor to accept the treasurer's report, say aye.
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 Aye, unanimous.
Aye.
Minutes of January 9th, 2018, what is the pleasure of the board?
Well, on page 2, I've been called Mr. Savory so many times that it's finally been written.
Oh, really? I
So on top of page 2, it should be Mr. Moore.
No, I like Mr. Savory, you just have to change the name.
Here it
Right
is.
Mr. Savory.
Mr. Savory, oh.
It was bound to happen. It's
It's
Mr.
like Mr. Bob.
Yeah, it's Mr. Moore everywhere else, but
Well, you know, I'm gonna tell you, I saw the vote and I'm going, Moore, who the heck is Moore?
I know, people in Carver are used to Savory being a last name, but I have it as a first name to keep it alive in the family, so. That's why, that's all I
That's
saw.
the only change. I'm gonna have to abstain, I think.
What's the pleasure of the board?
I make a motion we approve with the change.
I'll second that.
Motion made and seconded to approve with the change. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
One abstain.
One abstention. Okay, next meeting date will be March 20th, 2018, and we're changing the date
Oh,
And we're
okay,
also changing the time frame.
good.
With the cushion,
March
20th. We changed the date to an off date of obligations that I would normally have with the planning board and the recording secretary, with discussions with other members. That was a good idea. And with discussions on moving it back to the 6 o'clock, it allows all our members to attend.
Okay,
Okay,
good, yeah.
that's fine.
Okay?
6.
Entertain a motion to adjourn.
We don't get to discuss anything?
Sure.
It's not on the agenda.
What's that?
Huh?
Member discussion.
Member discussions.
No, I didn't have it on the
Oh,
agenda.
yeah.
I figured we had a long enough meeting with
Can you
It'll
make
be
sure
on the
it's
next
on
one.
there, though? Could you make sure?
It'll be on
Mr.
the next
Chairman?
one. So entertain a motion to adjourn.
Take a motion to adjourn now.
Second.
Motion made and second to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everybody. We are adjourned at 6:45.